How's the sound there?
Let's
Yeah,
see.
it's pretty good. Okay,
Bring this up a little bit.
Yeah, you're
Closer.
tall.
Yeah, I'd hate to be trading stocks in here, 400 years ago.
So this place is really good for a song. It's not so good for discussion or conversation. So Sean said that to sort of like ease himself into it, he's going to sing for us this evening just to get yourself warmed up.
In honor of Bob Dylan.
Yeah, if you were to sing, what would your song be of choice this evening?
Let's see. Yeah, I really like Postman Pat. It's one of my
Very long list of ventures that you've been involved with. As founder, co-founder, CTO, you've been building product. And I was looking back over your career and I was trying to figure out how I was going to ask the first question to start this off. And I thought, well, it's actually too confusing. So I thought that I would say, I just direct ask and say, if you look back over those 16 years of events, what do you think was the most surprising single thing that happened?
Wow. It's a very hard one to answer because, it's kind of this process of continually taking crazy risks and being surprised that you survived.
Okay.
And so it's hard to pick out which particular survival event to point to. I suppose the most surprising one might have been the first one, which was that I had to drop out of my PhD because we somehow got funded for Demonware.
Okay. So surprising that you survived it, or surprising that you started it?
Surprising that we got away with it somehow. No one had any business giving us any money back then.
Okay. Talk a little bit about that, and talk about, I suppose, your own, your entrepreneurial drive to do something. Were you always entrepreneurial, and that was just the first opportunity you saw, or?
Yeah, I was entrepreneurial before that, I suppose. Although, I don't think I knew the word. When I was in college, around second year, I think I started doing some web design consultancy. I remember getting my inkjet out and Microsoft Publishing, or whatever that was called, and flyering Merrion Square with, leaflets saying I'd make your website, which had a zero response rate. But I was trying that before I ever got into real business. So I think that was there. Yeah. I think I'm not sure. It's my dad was self-employed for quite a while when I was growing up. A lot of people I know who are entrepreneurs have kind of had parents that were, not in traditional jobs. I think just the knowledge that you can somehow do that, for me anyway, made that an ambition.
Okay. Do you find that your entrepreneurial drive is, your outlet for that is always work, or do you see, that you're entrepreneurial in other aspects of your life as well? Do you hack things at home?
Yeah, I made a garden table recently. It was very satisfying. Yeah, I think, I like to make things. I think for me, entrepreneurialism, I think I can articulate this better than I might have been able to in the past. But for me, I was trained as an engineer, computer engineer then, and entrepreneurialism, or nowadays I'm the co-founder and CEO, it's really just trying to take the same skill set, the engineering skill set, and apply it instead to raising finance, and thinking about the whole business as a set of processes that needs to be managed.
So we might come back to that in terms of the role that you have and how you've gotten to that point. Talk us about those early days. As I said, you dropped out of the PhD. What convinced you to do that? Who convinced you to do that? Probably more appropriate.
I guess I convinced myself. It didn't seem to me like it would happen again. I've been avoiding. So the timing was that as an undergrad, we had a business. Ronan Percival, who runs Forest today, Dylan Collins, who was the co-founder with me of Demonware. We had an early version of Forest way back when we were undergrads. So we had that kind of moving along, and Ronan and Dylan were making a great success of it, while I had pulled back to do my PhD. I was only working part-time in the business. We were trying to start Demonware. To me, that seemed like a fantastical kind of thing, that we'd raise money, that someone would actually give us €500,000, I think, at the time, to do that. I didn't think it was really going to happen. I thought I'd probably, continue doing the PhD, and if this happened, it would be a nice thing. We gave it our best shot, and it did happen, and I had no choice, basically.
Did you set yourself success and failure criteria to say, I'm going to give this X amount of hours, X amount of months, or my own cash or whatever, and if it doesn't work and we're not hitting these things, I'm just going to go back and do the PhD.
No, way too stupid for that. Yeah, I think you're kind of using a lot of lean startup phrases there.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, if I knew all that lean startup stuff at the start, I mightn't have actually started. It took a little bit of stupidity and or in other words, braveness to kind of jump in head first into doing a lot of things.
But there must have been some spark of sorry folks, is that better? There must have been some spark of entrepreneurial, sort of passion in you to even be doing, when I was undergraduate studying computer science, running my own business with 2 other friends was nowhere near my agenda. So, but what was that drive there? Did you just want cash? Was it to impress girls?
I wasn't very good at that back then. You start a company and it doesn't work. You give it the best shot you had. You learn a bunch of things you would never learn otherwise, and you go back into your regular career, what it would have been otherwise, with a whole bunch of experience that you're probably going to be rewarded for anyway. So for me, it was a calculated risk kind of thing. I can do this for a certain amount of time. I can go out on this limb that far, and if it doesn't work, it's fine. And it so happened that we found success while we were out in that adventure.
Huh. So what was the perceived upside of the risk? So when you were kind of going, well, what have I got to lose? I can just go back and I can just keep going. What did you have an idea that this is going to be multi-million, tens of millions, Ferraris? What was driving you?
I probably thought $1 million
each, or between the 3 of you?
Yeah, I don't. Maybe Ronan and Dylan were more sophisticated than me, thinking about actual numbers. I assumed if you found success it would be millions and it would be great, but I didn't really think much further than that, how many millions would we need in order to be self-sufficient. So I think actually what was probably motivating me most at that point, and I think I was 22 at the time, was experience. Why not? Yeah. Okay. Go out, run a company. And also get in the games industry, those guys in Havoc.
Was there also something around the sort of the disruptive innovation part of it, that maybe you built the product with Forrest and you just wanted to build new things? You tinker like that?
Yeah, I mean, it was going to be something or other. At the time, my PhD was in peer-to-peer networking, which is anonymizing peer-to-peer networks. So you can download movies illegally online, or have free speech, as we call it.
Thank you.
And
on behalf of the internet, thank you for that.
Yeah, and then Tor happened, and that was better. But yeah, so I was trying to build that anyway. That was a mission in itself. In the end, it turned out it was just something better came along. But it wasn't that; it would be something else. I mean, I don't think I can sit in my hands and deal with it.
So Dylan and yourself, who were part of the founding team with Ronan and Ron Percival, who have all been guests of Startup Grind at one stage.
Yeah, on the hat trick.
On the hat trick, absolutely. I'm done. I'm going to drop the mic and walk away after this. Dylan and yourself left and Ronan charged on, and Ronan is still charging. What was that conversation like? Did you try and bring Ronan with you and say, Forrest is a disaster, let's build games? Or?
Oh, we ended up in the surprising position of having 2 businesses between 3 of us, which is a good problem. It's a long time ago to try to remember, but really, I was the techie, so I had to go with the really big techie business. Demonware was pure, hardcore tech play. Dylan and Ronan were pretty much both doing business development. So there wasn't, I think there was probably a natural amount of them stepping on each other's feet while they were both trying to run the same 2 companies. Yeah. So there had to be a division of the 2 companies between us. I can't really remember what made it split that way, but I mean, Dylan was the guy who put his heart and soul into pitching Demonware right the way through. Who'd done his dissertation, his undergrad dissertation in business in the games industry. So I think he had a natural affinity with the Demonware. Let's try and take over the world with a internationally scalable, extremely high risk software proposition. And I can't really remember Ronan not being in tune with that mission, but the prospect of having Forrest, which was a business that was beginning to take off with real customers, and being able to stay on the ground and build that in a, you know, like as a business instead of a startup, I think was appealing to him. So that's the way the, I suppose, stakes fell.
Any regret at walking away from Forest at that time? He's done a pretty decent job.
He's done a great job. Yeah. No, not at all. No.
Okay.
It was, in retrospect for me, definitely the right thing to do. I think it was great for him.
I mean, like, considering what was built out of that threesome, that triumvirate of founders.
Crazy things happen in college.
Crazy things happen in college.
This is live, right?
This is live, yeah, actually, so that's right. So yeah, considering what the three of you managed to build and go on, would you consider doing something again with the three of you in the future? And then maybe just talk about that balance of skills in terms of the founding team.
Yeah, I imagine the only thing we could all see doing with each other in terms of business would be to back like a fourth business, you know, between the three of us. I think the thing is that we had our respective roles at the very, very start back in college, and we've all kind of grown up to be CEOs, so you definitely can't have, you know, three people thinking they are leading the business. So I don't really see a future where we're ever kind of in the same business, each trying to exert our own leadership at the same time. But, you know, in wars together.
Yeah, absolutely. But I was going to say, because as you move through your career and you continue to found new projects and build into ventures, you looking at the path, you tend to bring people along with you who have been there from the start. So Dylan and yourself went on and did Demonware, then Jolt, and then people who were at Jolt with you went on to do Front Square and then Scalefront, and now into PageFair as well.
Yeah, and in fact it was, so after Demonware when I left, it was Brian over there that I teamed up with, and we were in the same class together back in Trinity. Okay. We teamed up together and did a few small things, and then together went into Jolt with Dylan. So an even more advanced version of that.
So that's a nice segue into the question around founding teams. What advice would you give to a sole founder at the moment then about trying, like, you're living
Any sole founders? Yeah. So I can't
be brave. Are you
list,
sole founders?
Yeah, there's a few. Yeah, it's tough. Well, so
care to elucidate?
Let's see. So I've been in in Forest it was a 3-founder company, then Demonware a 2-founder company, then in Jolt it was a 1-founder company. It was Dylan's company, and he was like by far the majority owner. Then there was Front Square, a 3-founder company. These are the most common numbers, right? The 2-founder I think is really good. 3-founder is actually quite difficult. We've been in businesses before with 3-founder companies, and we found it was very hard to make decisions because, you know, with 3 people there's a lot of communication lines, and there's for the first time room for different interpretations of what was agreed. With 2 people you can't actually have that. Although now we're in a 3-founder company again with Neil, and it's actually, you know, actually quite very easy. But then again, the 3 of us are kind of clones of each other, so that's probably why.
And
we were remarking yesterday how screwed we would be if there was just one of us, because we're like, at least there's 3 of us clones, you know. We can kind of manage this workload. If it was just 2 of us, it's pretty much unimaginable how we would, you know, balance, you know, all of our duties like on 2 shoulders, let alone 1. Yeah. It gets harder as you get bigger. There's just more and more to do, you know.
Okay. But just talking about that in terms of clones, right? I mean, if you're a sole founder, presumably you're trying not to be a sole founder anymore. You're trying to scale, but bring a co-founder on board. In terms of pattern matching, you know, did you see success because you found people who were like you, or who were as far away from you as possible?
Yeah, I wish I had an answer to this one, because, like, I would say in Demonware, Dylan and I were polar opposites, and we kind of played into that.
Yeah.
So played into it in the sense that Dylan was the real hustler, and, you know, great businessman, and actually extremely analytical. Like, he's got an amazingly sharp mind. But actually, I kind of saw him subdue that a bit so that he could, you know, maybe hustle a little bit better. Whereas I tuned up the other side of me, which was like pure analytical, pure engineering, and we deliberately complemented each other. And I think it worked quite well. But yeah, then again in PageFair it's totally different. We're like very much an engineering organization. We're approaching, like, from whether it's Brian or Neil or me, we are tackling things on a factual basis, not on a believe it and pray kind of basis. So there I have an experience of working really well both ways. Now I think it comes down to the people.
Talk about the Demonware adventure. You said it was a bit of a haze and it's a bit lucky, but you got to the point where someone gave you $500,000. That's pretty lucky, and then you got acquired for 17 million. That's probably even luckier. But
that's what I said.
Yeah. What was your interpretation of those events as you were going through?
So I thought it was like a great lark, lots of fun. We'd made jobs for ourselves in the video games industry, so that was cool. Objective number one kind of like accomplished. We got the money together, we got some people we really trusted, that we knew as students together, and we started building a crazy product that was totally unnecessary. Because we had this idea that to deserve money, you had to do something complicated. And we didn't quite realize you had to do something relevant. We substituted complicated in there for relevant. As I recall the company, there were a few stages. The first stage was building version number one, which was a peer-to-peer self-organizing network for routing real-time games traffic to an arbitrary number of players. If anyone cares.
It is complicated.
Yeah, it was fun, but irrelevant in the end. We accidentally did something lean. Dylan immediately started pushing for something he could show to customers. I mean, really, really early. Lean didn't exist back then, but Dylan needed something to do, I guess, and everyone else was an engineer, so we started pushing for a demo, which made us produce something. Dylan and I went on a road trip around America, around 17 game studios who took meetings, which was amazing. We just had to email people would meet us, our rock stars would meet us. And they'd look at our demo and tell us it was cute, but it didn't need it. And that was about 6 months into the journey. So we went back with our tails between our legs, back to Dublin and said, we met id Software, who made Quake, but they don't want it. And mainly it was because we thought massively multiplayer games were something fun to solve. If anyone is in games here, everyone goes after the same thing. They want to do, if it's networking, something massively multiplayer. But they were saying we can only render 4 people on the screen at the same time. It's like an original Xbox map. We don't have that kind of power. We just need to get from zero networking to some networking, not to advanced networking. So we went back and iterated 2 times, I think 2 major revisions on that first product, which was just trying to hook players up, the communication up between games consoles. And we got it kind of right the third time and sold it to a tiny little game studio. And we finally had our first piece of revenue, our first customer, and that was around month 22 of the company. It was scary, right? Because we were burning through that like €500,000 with a team, and we're looking for our first customer, and we finally found one, and that was pretty cool. But it didn't really take off for another year after that.
Talk about the environment that you're in, because this is like what, 05, 06 or thereabouts?
Yeah, we started in July 2003.
Okay.
So by 2005 we started to sign customers.
Okay. How did you retain people? Like, what was the environment like for keeping staff? And they were college friends, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, was Google here?
Not in
No, really, no. As I remember at the start, we were like, we're from Trinity, and if anyone else was from Trinity and actually liked doing hard things, we would probably know them already, and they would just come work for us. Okay, that was pretty handy,
That'll keep your burn down.
And that's how we grew for quite a while. Yeah, it was totally different. It wasn't competitive. There wasn't, 1,000 software companies with, 5,000, 10,000, whatever open positions, pulling all kinds of tricks to try and get people to actually come in and do the work.
There also wasn't a well-trodden path for a small, scrappy Irish tech startup to go and sell to big corporates in the US. How did you even start that, or did you just jump in?
We just jumped in. I mean, Dylan was good at jumping in, and he dragged me with him. He kind of pulled me down as he was falling. Let's say those first meetings we got with those game studios. This was, I suppose it was the end of 2003. LinkedIn didn't exist, so you couldn't just look people up and email them or in-message them. So our trick was to go through the games magazines and find the names of everyone running every game studio and guess their email addresses and spam them, and it worked great. And it was along with I suppose a slightly gutsy message saying, you know, hey, we happen to be in Madison, Wisconsin.
Did you do anything like, you know, say, you know, we've got like, you know, 500 people back in Trinity College working on this stuff, you know?
Yeah. I was still an engineer, like a true engineer, so I couldn't lie. But things were said, I'm sure, by someone along those lines, you know, way back in Ireland where no one ever goes. Yeah, hundreds of people beavering away, you know, making advanced networking code.
What stage along that journey falling with Dylan did you realize that this could actually be a success?
It was the big customer, when we got a big customer. So it all happened very quickly from 2005 forward. On version 3 we had something that we could sell, but we started to hear feedback from people saying, basically, you can make the games consoles talk to each other really well, but we need web services to keep track of scores and arrange matches, that kind of stuff. So we started to build that as well, which if there was anyone from Demaware here who remembered it, they'd make fun of me right now. I normally get a heckle at this point, or I used to, because I said that would take easy. Database programming, only 3 months. And about 4 years later, it was actually working without people having to get up 3 times a night to restart the servers. But once we built that product, we had a full feature set, and people needed it. In the middle of 2005, Activision called us and asked us if they could rent the entire company to go to LA for a year.
How big were you at that stage?
Only about 10 or 12 people. Wow. Yeah. So they were making, let's see, I hope my timing's right on this one. Roughly right. Maybe someone can remember better. But the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 were about to come out. Call of Duty was a launch title on those consoles, and that was fine. They had that in hand. But they were making a Call of Duty for the old consoles, and they didn't have anyone to do the networking. So they needed a team, and they came to us. So we were stuck with this interesting decision as a startup. Do we basically say yes to the second biggest customer, potential customer on the planet, and implicitly agree to become a consulting company, or do we try and say no to them and retain our product ideology?
How many milliseconds did that decision take?
It took a while. It took a few days as we played for time, and I seem to remember Dylan and me having some huge fights over it. You know, like that was probably one of the tensest moments between us in the company.
What was? Give us some of the arguments. Talk us through it. Like, what was the fear?
We're obviously rational on both sides, but we have different responsibilities. So. I think, if I remember right, Dylan was more for we have to give these people what they need. They're the star customer on the planet for people like us, and we could also do it with money. And I was thinking, but I like product. I'm the engineering type, right? I said we have a product philosophy. I want something that can scale, right? So the thing is, in the end, we agreed, right? We found like something we could both agree on. But I think Dylan started off more in revenue, and I started off more in product. In the end, we sold our products to Activision along with some of our engineers, basically.
We squared that circle, which is good.
Well, you know, it was the perfect thing to do in the end. It was just the first time I think we had to have an existential crisis about product versus consulting, really, services, and that's a tough one. But yeah, it worked out, and we did the networking in that game, and we had some, fantastic staff who basically agreed to go to LA, which isn't, it sounds nice, but it's not nice if you go there and go there for a long time and get it over the line. And they were real superheroes. And the game launched, and people said mediocre things about the game, but they all said, but the networking was great. After that, we basically were picking up customers faster than we could do anything with them. We poached a great sales guy off our biggest competitor, and before we knew it, we were doing 20 games simultaneously, and that's a blur.
Okay. So how long then between that deal with Activision until the acquisition? When did that start appearing on the horizon?
Yeah, I think it was late 2006 we began talking about it with them. When they came over to say we want you to work in Call of Duty, they didn't just sign a contract, they actually sent a guy to Ireland who insisted on visiting the data centres. We didn't quite get it, but he was doing due diligence on us in case they wanted down the line to you know, purchase us, make sure we were purchase worthy. So they can get into business with us, but you know, potentially take a shot at acquiring us down the line. I think that was what was going on. So that was in 2005. Clearly they were thinking about that. Maybe they do it to all of their vendors, but they did that to us. Late 2006, the topic was on the table. I think 2007 they bought us.
Okay. Was it surprising? Were you shocked? Were you just so focused on product and generating value that this just blindsided you? Or?
No, not at all. You don't get you can't be bought without your permission, really. So it was definitely.
Was it something that you were gearing for at the same time?
Yeah, it was an interesting time. This category of networked video games was new when we started. I mean, it had been around for 10 years, but in console games it was relatively new when we started. So by around 2007, we could see a few things, like Xbox has Xbox Live. Xbox Live was getting really good and kind of becoming a lot like what we had. PlayStation was doing PlayStation Network. Apart from, you know, massive data breaches and, you know, some bad engineering here and there, they were basically becoming competitors as well. And it's hard to compete with the platform that you are on, right? That's a really bad proposition. So we were really afraid of platform risk at the time. And I think that motivated our decision to say, well, we're at this point now, we've got, you know, amazing games, great team, we've got a certain value now. If we double down and go for another, you know, 10 years in this, I think we're 4.5 years in, but if we double down and go again, then we'll be getting into a new industry cycle and we need to take on a new challenge. So when we had a good buyer and a good offer, we took it on that basis.
Demonware still goes today, right? Mm-hmm. It's still a standalone company, several hundred employees, I guess, worldwide at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, standalone within Activision.
Within
fully owned by Activision. I think it's 200 people. I think on Parnell Street, I think there's about 90 there, about the same number in Vancouver, and the remainder in Shanghai. Shanghai office was after my time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel you left anything on the table, or did you, not in terms of say, financial return, but in terms of what you wanted to achieve with the company at that time?
Strictly speaking, the answer to that would be no, because back then I wasn't smart enough, I think, to know what I know now. So, I mean, first of all, it was a great deal for me. I was 27, sold the company, was king of the world for a while, felt great about it, and was set up to, you know, continue my career to where it is now. So, pivotal for me, absolutely. I don't want to second guess that. But at the same time, we had hundreds of millions of player accounts in our database, along with what games they were playing and what scores they had across all platforms. And we were working with most of the big, I mean, every big games company in the world except for EA, with exclusives with EA, with Ubisoft and Activision. So we basically had the database that a game social network would dream of having, but we never saw ourselves as a consumer-facing platform. So if I did have a time machine or could swap bodies with my 26-year-old self, I would say, you know, you need to actually make a proper website, Sean, that people can log into.
You're good at that, right? That's what you did in undergraduate, you make websites.
Yeah, I should have thought of that one. Don't rub it in. Yeah, but you know, you see companies, I mean, we basically had a social network tied up in our database, and you know, we could have worked that around by working with, especially with our customers, working on the contracts and saying we're going to basically enable this data on a platform. And that would have made us basically a social network.
Sean Zuckerfield, right? You know, around the right time, you know, if you had switched to make that on.
Yeah, would have been the Demonware, you know.
In your career, I mean, we skirt through some of the other projects in the next couple of minutes, but you've jumped around quite a bit in terms of the market segments that you go into. Gaming was maybe a strong part of that sort of middle piece, but you moved into media, you were in education, EdTech startup for a brief period as well. What's been your North Star there? Like, you know, if you look back and say, you know, you king of the world after selling Demonware. Were you most pleased that you were kicking your competitors' ass and that you were in all of these amazing games, or that you had built an incredible product from an engineering perspective?
Yeah, definitely enthused by beating our competitors' asses and so on, but really, I mean, I was glad we were beating the competitor that was like, trying to find the word that isn't the curse word, right? The ones that weren't any good. We had some other competitors that were actually pretty good, and I had a lot of respect for them, and I felt perfectly fine with them having, their games and doing well. The world is a big place. It's okay to have some competitors. So I think I probably felt most proud of every time we hit a new performance level with the product. Like when we got past 100 players at the same time, and then 1,000, and 10,000, 100,000, a million. I think normally it hovers at around 2 or 3 million players concurrently at the moment. But that was thrilling, because you're like, wow, there's literally the population of Ireland that's using our technology right now.
That's awesome. In terms then of I suppose your involvement in looking at your day-to-day, your role and how it might have changed as the company grew to those things, did you ever look at the product and kind of go, you're just doing it wrong, just get off the chair, I'm going to sit here at the keyboard and bash this away because I'm the CTO, I'm the founder, this is my product?
Questions. I was mostly good at that, but there were a few cases when I ended up just coding, and yeah, I mean, I was good at it. Like in the early days, I was one of the coders, so I was like, it was a small team of 5 programmers, including me, and that was okay. So I managed to have maybe 20% of my time for commercial stuff or crazy trips to America, and the rest would be back home, and I'd try to contribute with the product. Pretty soon, it became more of a casting vote position on engineering decisions. But yeah, I remember in even the later days of my time at Demonware around 2006, basically rolling my sleeves up with one of the more senior guys on the team from my old research group, and just recoding the core server from scratch in C. It was really, really cool. But probably a bad move. Was it really necessary? Was my absence from the company for that period worth it? Yeah. Good news is now I have people to not let me do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. People whose job it actually is to look after technology.
They're sitting here in the room, some of them, so we might get to that in a second. After the acquisition, you're king of the world, you're sitting there, you're 27. Did you ever consider not doing the next startup?
For a few months.
Did you think you're getting?
But I was just basically decompressing for a few months, and I think by about 3 or 4 months in, I just had to do something else. Had to go again. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it was just getting boring,
Did it have to be you building the product at that stage? Did you consider getting involved in a different way, or was the keyboard out and you were just starting to try things, or what was guiding you at that stage? What you knew, what you were excited about, what other people might have been exploring?
I don't think I was too structured in my thinking back then. I think my idea was, Forrest worked out and Demonware worked out, this stuff isn't too hard, we should just keep on doing this kind of stuff. This is a funner way to make money than working in a job. So I think it was pretty much something like that. I mean, I was in the process basically of trying to convince Brian to leave his well-paying job to come join me, do this kind of stuff. I think my arguments after too many brews probably boiled down to it's fun, and there's lump sum payments if you get lucky.
So you skipping through, you went back and you did some stuff with Dylan, which was obviously a roller coaster with Jolt. Talk about maybe what happened with Front Square, if we can skip past.
You're trying to skip past the whole Playboy thing in Jolt, is that it?
We can talk about Playboy. Do you want to talk about Playboy?
It wasn't a roller coaster. Jolt was Dylan's games company after Demonware. He called social gaming before it happened. That's the kind of thing that Dylan can do. He told me on a plane once, I think people are going to start playing games through the web browsers. And it's not going to be teenage boys. he just figured that one out, I think, like in 2006 or something. And as the Activision sale went through and they didn't need him around anymore, he left pretty much immediately and started Jolt, just to do that kind of thing. Except he didn't integrate it with Facebook, which was the problem. Right? Facebook social gaming took off. Standalone web browser social gaming didn't really. What do you call that? Yeah, that was a fun company. Did a bunch of games. One of them he licensed from Playboy. That caused some ructions you were in Enterprise Ireland at the time. That was an interesting time.
It was probably my favourite day
there was
ever.
Massive philosophical. Yeah, and the investors, and obviously we're not too long after the bailout, so there's a lot of public money in the company. Yeah, and a lot of philosophical arguments about what exactly is porn. And Playboy is a brand. You can get on pencil cases these days. It mightn't be necessarily what those people are remembering Playboy used to be when they were looking at Playboy, in the 1970s. So, I don't know. But that was a fun time. Yeah.
So moving swiftly along, I didn't want to go there. But I was curious because you described yourself as being lucky with Forest and then lucky with Demonware. The luck kind of ran out a little bit with Front Square.
Well, yeah, I think so. But we gave it a good shot. I think what we miscalculated was our investment in it. So Front Square was taking social games and applying it to serious games, like educational games. And with another fellow, Jeff, who Brian and I met, he was working on this business idea already, which we thought was pretty interesting, teaching Lean Six Sigma using games. This is basically stuff that big companies use for process improvement internally, and it's about how people work together. And we thought, we can actually do this in a multiplayer game, and we think we can make this real, like a really good simulation. People really play with each other and tangibly pick up the principles. And we teamed up and we built that thing, and I think it was really good. It was nice. It's like a Flash-based kind of Farmville style game that, in a wax-on, wax-off sort of way, teaches you the core tenets of Lean Six Sigma process improvement in lots of companies.
How do you say that with a straight face?
Well, I only kept the fact at the end there. But, yeah. So we spent 11 months on that, I think, and lots of our own money. We had a couple of people we'd hired and we were paying with our own investment in it. But in the end, we just didn't sell anything to anyone. We had a lot of big companies that were really, really interested, and their interest in many ways were keeping us alive in it. Saying, wow, we have, I think we had 2 companies with over 100,000 employees each, both of whom were heavily engaged in saying cool things. Like, we definitely see rolling this out across our enterprise. That kept us in the game, but in the end, we could never close a sale with those guys. Or maybe we could have if we stayed at it for another 2 years, but who knows? So you're a tiny startup trying to sell to a mega company. Doesn't work very well.
This is what, 2009 or thereabouts, or
2010.
2010. So
second half 2010 for 12 months or 11 months. Yeah.
So around the time that Eric Rees, Steve Blank, and the guys were starting to espouse Lean analytics, the Lean startup methodology.
Yeah. We did something very.
You did something very unlean.
Yeah. Well, 11 months in, without a proof point.
So you were chasing vanity metrics to use it.
Yeah, we were basically being, lovely compliments from people in important companies. That's what we had.
Yeah. Talk about then, I suppose, your role at that point, the relationship with Jeff and Brian. I want the relationship, but how you operated together, and then how that led to the decision to walk away. What was eventually kind of, maybe it was cash, but maybe it was more rational reason as well.
Let's see, I'm trying to zoom back there. We didn't all come to a conclusion at the same time. I think I was getting kind of antsy first, but it was still around like the same timeline. And I think I just couldn't see where the end was for me. I think Brian reached the same conclusion around the same time. Jeff kept on running with it for a while after we left, but I don't think he is anymore. Okay. So, kind of just after a certain amount of investment without actually getting like a sale, actually even getting a real trial, it was kind of self-evident even without reading Eric Rees grease that something was terribly wrong.
Do you think it was a mistake entirely to start, or do you feel that there was something that you were able to step back from and learn? Is it like, I'm never setting to...
Well, what happened immediately after, and as I remember, it was the Lombard pub up on Lombard Street. Brian and me were getting drunk and talking about it. And it wasn't that per se was wrong. I'm sure there's lots of companies that went down a similar path for the first 11 months and then became very successful. But it was an irrational way to continue.
Yeah.
That, we were 31 or something, feeling very old at the time, and we were just thinking how many of these would we need to do in order to get a success. Basically, if you take an idea and gamble a year on it, you could lose a lot of your life doing that. What's our expectation of getting a return on that? So, other people, probably will have had very successful businesses that they've plowed 2 or 2.5 years into without getting that first trial, that first kind of enterprise customer. And I don't want to take anything away from them, if it worked for them. But for us, we just couldn't see it as a way of rationally continuing with our careers to keep on repeating that process.
Okay.
That was just too expensive.
What was the alternative for you? I mean, were you at that point, I suppose, comfortable enough post the Activision stuff to be able to kind of sit back and twiddle away on things and hack every now and again, or
no?
Well, again, go back. What was driving you at that stage?
Doing more companies. I think at that point, first of all, I had to make more companies. More money is always nice. Having the idea of real financial independence is for me having enough money that I can actually seriously invest in things. Not that I can kind of retire early. So I'm definitely not there yet. So yeah, that was certainly an aspect of it. There was something else going on in my mind though, which was I had up to that point kind of seen myself as a technology guy still, and that I should be doing the product stuff. And by that point, maybe for the first time or somewhere during the front square experience, my mind just switched and I said, screw it, I'm going to be I need to do the business part from now on.
Okay.
And I've got to learn how to do that properly. And I wanted to do that role. What does
properly mean? So at that point, were you looking around and going, there's a business person, she's doing things properly? What did you? What was the delta for you there that you saw that you weren't doing?
So as a co-founder in a business, you obviously have a big say in direction, but if it's not your main thing that you're thinking about all the time, then the direction of the business isn't really what you're contributing on. As a CTO, you're mainly contributing on implementation.
Yeah.
And I think by the end of Front Square, I'd been through enough companies that I just couldn't see myself. I actually realized, oh crap, I've got a lot of experience at business, and I've got to actually be using that in the most productive way, which for me was spending all of my time thinking about direction and strategy.
Okay. And to be more specific, were there people that you looked around and said, look at them being a proper business person? Who in the community was knocking it out of the park for you that you admired? Was there anybody?
I'm sure there were loads, but I haven't got that answer prepared.
Was this around the same time that you started being techpreneurs though? Did you start pulling that community people?
So the strategy basically after Front Square was from the same basically session of drinks that Brian and I had. We came out with some new ideas saying we have lots of ideas and we have lots of ideas. We were very good note takers and had 50 business ideas, give or take, that we'd written down since we joined up after I left Demonware. And we decided to do them all. That was our, it was risky doing them one at a time, but you should parallelize, right? It's called throwing stuff at the wall and saying what sticks. So we decided, whatever about serial entrepreneurship, let's call this parallel entrepreneurship, to figure out how that would work. We had read the Lean Startup and all that stuff by that point, and that set out a model, a very scientific, fact-based, or evidence-based model for, exploring a business idea serially. And we thought, well, maybe we can adapt this a little bit and do it in parallel. So we couldn't figure this out with the number of pints in this probably, but we thought there was a way through basically running lots of early stage experiments concurrently under one roof, under one company, owning the whole lot. It's all about, unlike an accelerator program, for example, these were our ideas. The people who'd be doing the work in it would be people we hired, and we would basically be starting at 100% equity, which would also financially make a difference. So if we found a success story within there, it would be ours, not like 3% ours, but ours, and we could start from there. And we thought maybe we could even make something evergreen. We weren't the first people to think of this. We didn't realize it, but there's a company in New York, and even was at that time, called BetaWorks, which is a similar model. And they declared themselves to be an evergreen fund or evergreen portfolio vehicle or something like that soon after. Where basically said, we're staying as BetaWorks, we're building companies, and we're going to keep on going. TweetDeck, they did TweetDeck, and Chartbeat came out of there, so they're doing quite well. That's what we were after. So Techpreneurs happened with that company. Scalefront was the name of the lab. And this was a meetup that I ran starting whenever that was, 2011. And just for basically, we thought, engineers trying to be CEOs. That was the initial team, although it broadened from there quite a bit. But basically a no sales zone, no bullshit. No bullshit stuff. A zone where we could take once again, an evidence fact-based approach to non-technical questions about starting businesses. Okay. But my ulterior motive was I outsourced all of our problems to the best think tank I could find in Dublin.
Talk about the ideas. 50 ideas. It actually, when you think about it objectively, it seems like a very small number. Like we could go to the pub now and come up with 1,000 ideas this evening, right? Why 50?
Well, I think it was like 49 or something. But these were ideas that we were diligent enough that when we had an idea in the pub or walking to work or whatever, and we were discussing this from late 2008 up to that point, we actually wrote them down. We had an Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet or something, and we wrote all the ideas down as we went. There were ideas that individually, we didn't sit down and say, let's have lots of ideas, but ideas that individually, for at least as long as it took to explain them, we were excited enough about them to write them down.
That was the initial filter, right? That's the quality filter. If I write it down, it must be meaningful. I'm going to keep it in the pocket and something happens.
In retrospect, that was the filter.
Any other filters? When you sort of formalized this and said, look, let's do Scalefront, let's do this parallel entrepreneurship, parallel lean startup stuff, did you immediately sort and say, forget these ones?
Yeah, so we started off with a stack of ideas, which weren't really filtered, by the way. It's just does someone care enough about them to actually put a name to it, write the paragraph describing the thing. And we had 50 ideas roughly of that standard. But then the challenge was, how do you actually progress from 50 ideas down to the ones you can actually do? And we didn't really, at the start, we didn't really know exactly how to do that. So we started coming up with filtering criteria. We had basically lean canvases that we did for about 25 of them, I think. Okay. We added on an extra page to the lean canvas for things that we thought was missing. Like we thought if we're going to do a portfolio like this, we need a success to be of a minimum size in order for it to be worthwhile. Okay. And I remember thinking we were saying something like $10 million. But we thought if the total addressable market of this thing is less than $10 million, we just stop talking about it and move on to the next one. And the total addressable market can be actually quite easily calculated in most cases.
When you set out the ideas and you went into the canvas mode and you were starting to filter them down, you were narrowing the granularity of what you wanted to do. Did you see yourself as being the continuous idea generator, idea filterer in the lab, or were you trying to find the one thing that you were going to become the CEO of to go on with?
I saw myself.
Is Scalefront dead, or is it?
It's dead in that form. Okay. One of the things is web-based game that continues to run, and that's the limited
Is it a
company.
browser game?
It's a browser-based game.
Is it playable?
No. Oh, you see, you brought it up that time. It's a text-based, massively multiplayer, like fantasy role-playing game that's been continuously running since 1997. Dylan acquired it, and then we acquired it off Dylan, Brian and me, and that's what 2009 was about. It's still going, and its home is Scalefront. It's crazy. Probably the oldest online game. But
Does anybody play it?
5,000 people. Yeah, and they know each other. They go on holidays. They get married to each other. It's bizarre. Hey guys.
So to go back to the question in terms of like, were you doing this to create innovation, to scale, or were you trying to find the thing that?
I wasn't trying to find the thing for me. I thought Scalefront would be it, and I could focus on trying to scale a process of doing companies within Scalefront. Every little bit of it, and trying to find the common platform for startups, like the boring stuff, like how to do accountancy right, how to take boring obstacles like that out of the way of each idea and centralize them in one place, so the startups could form at low cost. Just go after the markets and the customers, and not worry about like that business stuff. Maybe even have a flock of graphic designers and so on staff. The kind of platform you see Andreessen Horowitz building, even in Dublin, like Frontline has a lot of like thinking about this, and staff members that are just basically building platform. So I thought that's what I'll do. I'll stay in the middle of the company. As these ideas go out and succeed in the world, their lessons will come back, rest in my brain, and I will pass them down, and we'll recycle all of the lessons of all of the companies continuously and get stronger and stronger. That's how I saw that.
So what went wrong?
It was ideas of being an evergreen Scalefront. So one of the ideas, we launched 5 things, I think, during that year. MVPs mostly. The MVP for PageFair, because ad blocking was an issue. We saw this in the games business. Utopia, 30% of the players use ad block, so that pretty much makes it impossible to reinvest like a lot in, because that's a full salary right there. So we knew ad blocking was an issue. This is why it was one of our ideas. The MVP was just an analytics platform. Detect your ad block rate, figure out how much money you're losing. A piece of JavaScript you put on your website. So when we put that out, and it began to get traction. Neil, our co-founder, was basically totally implemented that project and picked up the phone and got pretty much every newspaper in Ireland to install the code. And then they started telling newspapers in the UK, and soon enough there were a few hundred people measuring ad block with us. And then one day in March 2013, so technically it started in October 2012, that MVP. Pretty low cost, but by March 2013, it had a big day of going viral. And it was front page on Reddit, and Hacker News, and Slashdot simultaneously, all day one Saturday. And we had a few hundred signups from websites that installed it and knocked our servers offline, and we had one of those weekends during my stag night. Thanks guys for working on Sunday after that with the hangovers. I didn't. On Monday we basically came in and we said, okay, what were we trying to prove with this MVP? And there were 2 things. One was the publishers care enough to come to us, so we wouldn't have a high basic customer acquisition cost. And number 2, do publishers really have a problem, or were we just incredibly unlucky being in the games business? And we saw of the people who signed up and all the ad blocking analytics we had, 20% of their ads were blocked. And that hundreds of publishers would come to us to measure this. So at that point we were like, holy cow.
But again, what was the decision process there? Because surely that's a good time to just send it out of the world and hire like a rock star publishing CEO with that commercial experience, and then keep on going with Scalefront.
Why put all the eggs in that basket at that stage? It's still not a kind of startup that's going to attract a rock star CEO. It's still. When it came down to it, we looked at it and said, "This is what would a seasoned, very intelligent investor do at this point?" And the answer was, double down. Put everything you have into this. You've got something. don't say, okay, now let's, see it survive the elements. It's put everything we have in. What we had was ourselves. So at that point, the idea of evergreen scale front suddenly seemed like, not so wise an idea. We had this huge market with a massive problem that we were the first ones to discover. We already had all this, basically a strong lead on how we would tackle the problem. We'd gamed it all out. We'd spent our time doing a lot of thinking up to that point. And compared to all of the other 50 or 20, 25 recent, decently researched business ideas that we've gone through in the last year, we had a sense of when an idea has enough good things about it that you have to begin to take it really seriously. And PageFair had lots of really lucky things going for it.
Just before we start wrapping up soon, maybe talk a little bit more about PageFair, but just before you move away from Scalefront, how did you manage the switching cost of moving between all those ideas? 50 to 25 and then launching 5 MVPs. Did you get confused between them? Which project you were working on? How did you manage it from a practical perspective?
I wasn't doing the work. There were other people. I mean, Brian and I were pretty much managing projects, and then whatever project was active had one person doing it. Right? Okay. That's how that worked. Okay. Whether it was, or in some cases two, someone doing the business development, someone doing the program. Okay. So we were switching between them, but more on a strategic front. Like, what's the next real proof point for this idea? Help whoever it was think of ways to maybe measure that, get to that next step, stand back, move on to the next one. That's the kind of thing we were doing. Focus was an issue, but you have to compromise. We decided to do parallel, and that's one of the things you give up a little bit. But there's benefits as well.
Do you think that there's anything in that 49 ideas that were discarded that could be, apart from the Utopia game with 5,000 people playing it, is there anything else that's there that you're still sitting on and polishing every now and again?
No. But I think there were ideas in there that were probably good, and that someone else running in a different model might have made it successive. The problem was, I'm not sure which ones. And we weren't willing to take the time out of our limited lifespans to figure that out the hard way.
Anybody want an idea? Sean's got loads.
Yeah, 10,000 a piece.
Nothing but takers.
But yeah, I mean, there was some, for instance, things we didn't do. Anything we explicitly said no enterprise, like in the sense that we had in Front Square, because we thought the problem there was it was unmeasurable. Right. So we steered away from that stuff. We steered heavily towards measurability, and at some point during the year, we flipped our mentality to not proving that something was bad and therefore shouldn't be continued, but having a default position that unless someone can make a compelling case, stand over an idea and make a case to the rest of us that was worth continuing to invest time in, that we would kill it. So we were basically let a lot of stuff go by the wayside on the basis that was the only way to move forward with other stuff that we could focus on.
Just moving on to PageFair, and you made an interesting point earlier on about in terms of the role. You describe yourself now as co-founder and CEO. You've had a lot of different titles, the businesses that you've been involved in along the way. When you walk into a room like this and you say, "I'm the CEO," what do you assume that people understand from that?
Let's see. There's all kinds of things. Like, the guy is not allowed to do the actual work, and he's got to leave the building. I'm not sure. I hope what people think is, well, I'm the person from the founding crew who's charged with not doing the product, but just thinking strategically about our place in the industry that we reside in.
How do you stop yourself now from writing code? Tell the truth.
I'm not allowed to write database queries anymore after that incident.
Don't tell us about the incident.
No, it's just some minor production crashes. Due to table locking. Anyway, sometimes I do a few little bits of skunk work. Try to use our own product, that kind of thing. every few months I might add a feature to Utopia on a Sunday. But pretty much I get my kicks out of spreadsheets these days. But you can do a lot of things with spreadsheets. There's spreadsheets that are pretty complicated. So. Do you know you can write SQL queries in Google Spreadsheets? You can do that, so that's what I do.
Let's pull away from that.
Okay.
Let's step back. If you're not writing code, how do you still feel that you control the direction of the product? How do you still get involved in that? Like, what's that like practically? Do you stand behind the engineers and say,
It's changed as we got bigger and we needed more process. At the start, it was basically three of us making mutual decisions in each other's pockets all the time. As the company's got bigger, we've needed more processes. At this point, like the engineering team is mainly focused with I think looking at the next 3 months in front of us and what needs to happen, which is really self-evident because we have customers and it's what the customers want so long as it's pretty collinear with the kind of thing we do is what has to happen. I'm thinking about 3 months plus and what happens next year at this point. As founders, we have every week we try to be quite disciplined about it and get together outside of the office and try to drop our hats, like our respective job hats, and step back and look at things strategically together. Every 3 months now, we're doing team sessions. Actually, every week we do a company-wide session. People dialing in from New York to join that to try and keep pace. Every quarter, we do all-day quarterly planning meeting where we look at strategy. And overall, I think if I get to influence, next year, but not the rest of this year. But if I do that right, I get the right data together, I think it'll just be the obvious next thing that needs to be built, and I won't need to be trying to, insert myself in someone else's job to make that the case.
Talk about the team. Are you involved in every hire?
No.
No.
There's 3 clones running the business.
Do you literally have clones, or how on earth do you manage to how do you optimize on values?
Well, I'm aware of every hire, but I'm not necessarily doing the interviews.
Okay.
The person who's the manager of that person is the responsible person, which at this point in the company is still one of my co-founders.
Okay.
If it's someone that's basically being hired into an administrative, marketing, or sales function, that's me directly. If it's engineering, it's Brian. If it's customer success, it's Neil. But we're deeply aware on a day-to-day basis of what's happening with every single hire. Okay. You got to basically we have to have autonomous responsibilities just to get on with work.
It's a very different environment now than it was when you were hiring in Demonware. What do you do to stand out from the plethora of startups, not to mind multinationals that are recruiting for this dev and for engineering talent here?
It's really tough, I think. It's one of the probably the hardest thing we've dealt with is trying to hire the team that we want to work in and be a part of in the city, and I think largely achieved it. One of the rows there, all PageFair folks there. So it's but it has been challenging to do it as quickly as we would like. It's very competitive. It's hard to. In the end, so we've got a lot of benefits. Right. We've tried to be a good place to work in terms of the package and the salary and everything like that. Obviously, a productive member in a successful company is always going to be worth their salary, easily because of the money that comes back from customers for the great work they do. But we've tried to focus a lot on culture as well. That everyone, even interns joining us in the summer, I think we're a great place to do an internship. I think every intern that's ever been in PageFair has had a fantastic summer because they've done actual work that's gone to production really, really fast, and they've been able to see the visibility between what they're doing right up to the customer, or sometimes the potential partner or the future of the company. it's not an accident. You know, we're trying to make sure that trying to take steps to make sure that the entire process that I have in my head of how the company is, that bit I'm trying to engineer is also visible to everyone else, and they can see how their work impacts. You know, from our point of view, like the mission is, you know, the future of the free web, and that there is a connecting dot between those two things.
Do you think that you recruit for little mini Seans or Seans or whatever the female version of Sean is? Like, are you pattern matching on people that you think will think like you and want to be driven by the same things?
We really try not to, but we also have to acknowledge it's very hard not to like try and identify with your own characteristics in people. So it's a kind of balance between the two. It also depends on the role. You know, sure. So there's like all different kinds of roles in the company.
Sure.
But I think, you know, you do need values. Like in any company ends up hopefully with some values, but normally are just accidental. Like whatever basically made the initial team gel, their personalities just ends up being the protocol of the company. For us, I think one of those is objectivity and trying to measure things. So trying to always construct a situation where we can have a rational conversation, make rational decisions based on facts. That is an example of something that, you know, I think is a positive. It means that within our company we're able to work with each other quite fluidly, because the way you get something done is you have the information. You don't make a impassioned, you know, plea, or you don't do it through charisma. You do it with facts. But at the same time, like, someone could say that means that only a certain kind of person who can work like that will be in our company. So maybe that could reinforce your point. Really, I mean, it's very, very hard to say. But successful companies have culture and values, and they're pretty much, if you read the books on this stuff, like Built to Last, which is an amazing book, it points out these are just accidents of history, mainly the personalities of the founders. End up getting crystallized in some kind of lore at some point in the company. And then the company filters for people who match that stuff. Not because those characteristics matter, but it matters that everyone has a common basis, you know, for reasoning about this stuff, like how you make decisions in a company. So you have to have something.
So I mean, if you think about, just briefly on this, but if you think about the future that you're getting, like the career future of the people you're recruiting, are you trying to build Seans to go out and become parallel serial tech entrepreneurs, or do you want them to live with you forever?
You mean like in the company?
Well,
we're trying to create mini-me's?
Yeah.
No. No, not at all. I think I actually think we have like a long future in front of us. Okay. So, you know, PageFair, I mean, Scalefront would have been a different story, right? In Scalefront, the idea would be to have a constant flow of people who wanted to be entrepreneurs coming through. In PageFair, we've got a mission, and I just want people to like want to do that mission and contribute to the company. That's all. And you know, if someone wants to, you know, help me with the accounts or whatever I spent my time doing, they're welcome. But you know, if they can, you know, do some product work, that's, you know, much better.
Okay. So I can smell food, but everyone can smell food as well. But I'm going to do just a couple of questions from the floor while we have Sean here. Sean's going to be around afterwards as well for a bit of pizza, so you can grab him afterwards. But if you want to shout out a question, if you stand and shout. Anybody? Sorry.
Okay, so the question, I'll repeat the question. Yeah, so the question is how we see the startup scene is going to evolve. Is there another dot-com bubble on the way? I feel like I would have been better qualified to answer this 3 years ago when I was still doing Scalefront, because this is all I ever thought about. So now I feel a little bit out of date. I've just been focusing on my own thing. But I think there's a couple of trends that I can still comment on. One is that a lot of people are doing startups, I think, because there's funding, that there's support structures for doing startups, which is fine, it's great. that doesn't mean the startups are necessarily going to make it. Every idea, isn't necessarily deserving. But a lot of them are getting funded, maybe not here, but like globally, which can create a scare and actually contribute to shutting down good ideas. In a perfect world, we would not have startups, just young businesses, I think. Like the difference being customers and revenue, or something repeatable, that you've got something that works. Yeah, it'd be nice if we could get back to that. And I think that we are always getting closer because the cost of doing product is always dropping compared to what it used to be. More and more things are automated. It starts sounding like an old guy really quick talking about it. To start a team where the first thing we had to do was buy an email server, buy a server to be an email server and install it in the building and get IMAP and POP and SMTP running on it so that we can configure our email clients. Those are the challenges you just have to deal with. And then actually renting servers and stuff, data centers. Like all this stuff doesn't matter anymore, it doesn't exist, and that's just to get going. Actually creating products, we have virtualization, now we have containerization, we have like amazing development platforms. All of those things should mean the cost of doing a startup is lower, and it's easier for people to do it off their own investment rather than having to go out and focus on perfecting their deck instead of their product. So hopefully that'll get us away from the bullshit a little bit. Sorry.
Yes. Oh. Other question? No questions. Everyone must be hungry. Do you think? So there's an industry built up around this, right? There's an industry built up around entrepreneurship and entrepreneurialism. Do you think that it's easier to achieve success, or it is easier now to be just drowned out by the noise of the people pillaging and raping on people's ideas and just killing them?
Well, it's a fear, but I haven't got a long enough career to really tell. Like, it was definitely very quiet when we started, like in the early 2000s. There was very little going on. But we still depended on raising investment.
Yeah.
Maybe one of the reasons, the big mystery of how the hell we managed to raise investment for Demonware was there weren't many companies trying that year. But if I could go back, if I could only go back another decade, when you look at the 1990s in Ireland, there's something curious. Your NASDAQ IPOs from the software companies built in Ireland in the 1990s. Right? We haven't seen many of those since. And there was no VCs back then, no investment, no Enterprise Ireland, not in its current form anyway. So yeah, it's possible without that, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I didn't experience it personally, so I can't quite tell what the difference is. But there is a system and industry around starting startups, and a lot of people are making money based on every hour they spend on you, not how successful you are. Yeah. And you got to watch out for those people because they're wasting your time.
Do you think that if you were, halfway through your PhD, Sean, say 3 years ago, or Sean now, that you would still drop out and start something?
Oh yeah. I don't seem to miss that PhD very much. Yeah. Okay. In fact, everyone I know who does a PhD doesn't seem to use it.
Just in terms of the environment, though, if you were looking at the environment now and you still had that entrepreneurial drive, do you think that you would want to just complete the doctorate and then do something? Has the environment changed enough since 2000?
I think, if anything, it would make it easier. So right now, you're like a good student who's graduated from Trinity or UCD or something in programming. You kind of have this great fallback of knowing you're going to, like, when you graduate, you're going to get like 50 grand a year anyway. Back like 10 years ago, there's more like, you'd hope for 20,000 a year salary, right? So your downside is much more de-risked now, as I think as a computer guy anyway, or girl. So you might as well, if you're young, just like take your years 20 to 25 or something like that, and go spend them on something risky. And if it doesn't work out, by the age of 25, you'll have all that crazy experience, and that 50 grand has probably gone up to something even more insane.
You've been an investor in a variety of different ways over the years. You've invested, obviously, in the 50 ideas that became Scalefront. you've invested personally on side projects in early stage tech companies as well. What do you think is the most rewarding investment you've ever made in yourself, be it time or experience?
It's easy, actually. It's not cash at all. I haven't made very many investments. I invested in Swerve in the very early days before it was called Swerve, and in Jolt. And apart from that, like some crazy property stuff in 2007, which she'll never talk about. No. Well, virtual Playboy shares in the game. But yeah, that's fine. But investing time, I think, is actually, you can replenish money, but you can't replenish your years. I think Scalefront, and the journey up to that, only in Scalefront I think did we become self-aware that there was a journey and there was a structure, and we got something working. That was amazing, right? Now I think I'm good at this now. I think it's actually repeatable. I think I can, create my own look to a degree by using all of the experience we accumulated by operationalizing what we were doing through Scalefront. And if I wanted to, just keep on doing companies that are amazing like PageFair.
Okay. I think that's a good point to leave it. I'd like you all to put your hands together, please, for Sean Blanchfield.